Today we're going to cover the concept of a cold wallet as it relates to masternodes and the security behind it. Here's a diagram of what a typical crypto coins network looks like, where you have several wallets, whether they're functioning as a masternode in some hot VPS wallet, VPS being a virtual private server, and a cloud like Vultr or DigitalOcean or Vermont. And then you've got the cold wallet. Now, typically, when it comes to masternodes, what people have done in the past in an insecure route is they would set up a Linux or a Windows VPS with its wallet, whether that's DigiWage or B3 or any of those masternode type coins. And they would have the wallet address and they would send some coins from their PC wallet over to that VPS and activate the masternode. And so that essentially becomes an hot wallet with funds, a hot node, so to speak, that actually has the funds. One of the downsides of having that type of setup is that your funds are actually in a wallet in the cloud somewhere. Now, you can take many precautions to secure your server, but as long as it's on the internet, nothing's truly secure. So if a hacker were to hack the VPS, and regardless if your wallet is passphrased, there's many ways you're exposing your funds because the key is sitting in that wallet. And so if they were to take that wallet, reverse engineer it, brute force it with passwords and try to unlock it, they effectively have control of your funds because the funds are effectively controlled by that wallet because the masternode private key is in there. A new or newer, more secure model is the cold wallet setup. And what the architecture around that is you still have a hot VPS that effectively has a dummy wallet. So whenever you start a wallet and sync it up, it is going to create a wallet.dat, right? So anytime you launch a DigiWage or B3 wallet, daemon or anything like that on a Linux VPS or even Windows, is going to create a wallet.dat with some address. And that address in a cold wallet setup should never have any funds. It should just be functioning and providing services to this network, right? But it will never actually have funds or let's say the private key that controls the funds to your masternode. So in this particular setup, you have a cold wallet on a PC that could be Windows or Mac that has some main address, transactions, address book. You've got this wallet here, right? And let's say in the case of DigiWage, where you have 12,000 coins that are required for your collateral, and your main address, from an exchange, you bought 12,005 or 12,010. You create a new address for your masternode, which now, whenever you go into a wallet and click new address under your receiving addresses and label it, it is going to create a brand new public address, and that public address is going to have a private key. Actually, it works the other way. It's generating a new private key, and from that it generates a public key, and then from that public key it hashes that public key and creates what's called a public address. So that the long string of characters that you see in addresses, right? This is your address, but technically in the wallet, there's a public key associated with it, which is much longer and a lot more difficult to recognize and discern. So you hash it, right? That's what wallets do. They hash that, make a public address. So you end up with this master node. And now the difference between that other setup, the insecure setup, is that your private key is in this wallet, this quote-unquote cold wallet that now has the private key and controls the funds for your collateral. So now you have an address with 12,000 coins, or in some other coin it may be, whatever its collateral is. And through a series of two configurations, you are effectively going to register a VPS that's going to function and provide masternode services to that coin's network, and that coin's network is going to reward you, right? The reward doesn't have to come to a hot VPS wallet with funds in it or private key. So in this particular setup, you have a masternode collateral address, which you have now sent over some coins to. those coins then sit in some input by themselves that serve as collateral to be able to register a second wallet that's running remotely. This is called a remote start. And what you do is through a series of two configurations, one local and one remote. So on your local wallet, your cold wallet, you have something called a masternode.conf. So, if you've got DigiWage, you have a digiwage.conf. Locally, that should be completely blank. There should be no reason to have anything in it unless you're, staking in that wallet as well. But typically, you leave that conf file empty. Just like if you have a B3 or any other coin, you leave that conf file empty locally, and you just have a masternode.conf, or in the case of B3, you have a fundamentalnode.conf. And in there is a particular string or configuration format. Now we'll get into that in later videos when I show how to set up some masternodes. But for now, it's you're gonna have an IP, you're gonna have some alias that you're going to call MN1, MN01. It doesn't really matter what it's called. It just has to be unique to that line. You have an IP. That IP is your remote VPS, public IP address, the port that the wallet runs on, and the gen key can be created anywhere. Anywhere, you load up your wallet, run masternode out gen key or fundamental node gen key, and you're going to generate a key that is essentially a unique signature. The transaction hash and index are something I wanted to explain by looking at Block Explorer. So people wonder, I've seen a lot of tutorials out there that say index should always be 0 or 1 or something like that, but that's incorrect. You don't really know what your index is going to be. You have to either type masternode outputs after you've transferred the collateral into a new address. You can type masternode outputs, but what is that really providing you? It's providing you the transaction hash and the index. But I'm going to show you how you can see that in Block Explorer. So let's look at DigiWage, for example. So I'm just in this top 100 on the rich list for DigiWage, which is what's recently swapped from Phil's currency. And I'm just going to go to this address down here. See this GYZ? So I'm going to click on here. And you can see they're getting stakes and they're getting masternode rewards. So I know that they've got a masternode collateral set up here. So I'm just going to go to the very, very end of their transactions because I know that's where it started. Look at this transfer, 12,000 coins. That's the collateral that they initially set up to set up their masternode. So I'm going to click on this. This is the hash for that particular transaction, right? Now let's look at this. So this is what's going to be the TX hash, right? So when you have a masternode.conf and you're wondering what your transaction is really the transaction ID or hash that you sent to your masternode for the purposes of holding the collateral. So that's the hash. Look at all these outputs. So you've got an input, right? Because the blockchain is effectively an input-output machine. That's all it is. They had an input of 59,000 coins, and they went ahead and created several outputs of 12,000 each here, multiple sends, and created multiple masternode collateral. And this was their change that came back. So this address is different than this. This is what's called a change address, and I'll have a video on that I need to clean up that will explain what change addresses are. But now these are 4 of their masternode collateral addresses. Doesn't matter what the address of this wallet is, that effectively is going to be functioning as a hot wallet with no funds. As long as it provides services to the network and you register it, the network will realize that you've registered through your collateral address, and it will pay that address whenever it's time for a reward. So the VPS will never be prone to having your funds stolen. Even if it gets hacked, you tear it down and destroy it. Even if you feel like you may have been hacked, compromised, you can destroy this machine in your VPS console, right? In Vultr, DigitalOcean, etc. Rebuild, update the conf file, sync the wallet, and re-register, because your collateral is always safe. So this is input. These produce the outputs, right? It's never just a 0 or 1. It could be multiple. So like in this case, let's look at the information. Actually, let's look at one that has just a simple case where there's just somebody created one masternode. Let's take a simple example of where someone just created a Masternode simply with one input or one couple of outputs. It'd be easier. Yeah, there we go, right? So in this particular case, we can come over here, and they had 12,812 coins. They sent 12,000 to their new Masternode address, which they had created previously, right? You create under your receive addresses, you could say new address. This is their change that came back, 812, back into their own wallet. So now their wallet is still showing 12,812 minus some fee that was paid for this transaction, but it's stored in two addresses, and this is their Masternode address now. This is the block hash, but this is the actual transaction hash. So what's their index, right? So remember, the configuration is transaction hash, and then you have an index. Index could be 0, 1, 2, 3, who knows? But the Masternode outputs file tells you that pretty easily, or the command tells you that easily. In this case, output 0 was 12,000, and output 1 was 812. And so this person's Masternode, in their configuration, they have some alias. They have an IP of their machine. Hopefully they have a cold wallet set up, so they put the IP of the remote VPS. They have a port for DigiWage. It's a specific port, 46003. They have a gen key that they just generated. You can keep generating as many as you want if you want to change it eventually. Transaction hash is what this output when they ran Masternode outputs. And the index is 0 because this is the first in the series of outputs. And if I click on information here, you can see that my VIN produced 2 VOUTs. The 0th index is the collateral, and the first one is the change that came back. And so this is another way to verify and to kind of make it known. You know, a lot of times people run the Masternode outputs, and as I mentioned, they just blindly say it's 0 or 1. Well, it's not always that way. In most cases it is, because people are just sending 12,000 and then the change is coming back. But if you have multiple transactions and multiple VOUTs, you can have different indexes. So this is just a good way to understand, you know, the blockchain and how the transfers work. So the Masternode.conf has in the cold wallet a configuration that says, hey, my VPS is stored at this IP or is hosted at this IP on this port. Here's the gen key I'm using. Here's the transaction hash and the index associated with my collateral, so that the chain or the peered network can validate that you indeed have your collateral there, because you have to have the collateral in your wallet to be able to not only register the VPS, but to also then collect the rewards. On the remote side, so we'll talk about the activation in a minute, but you have the Masternode locally that defines all the stuff that's done remote. Then I just put here coin.conf, but that could be digiwage.conf, it could be b3coin.conf, or whatever it is. Your conf file is going to have various pieces of information like the RPC user, RPC password, the port, you know, IP, bind IP, external IP, things like that, right? So the IP is going to be, again, the public address. The port will be for that particular coin. In DigiWage DigiWage's coin is going to be 46003. And then the gen key that you used over here, right? Because it's a unique signature. It says, hey, I'm registering this with this gen key, and then this guy matches, and so this VPS then gets activated and produces a message. So one of the things that when you sync a cold hot wallet setup like this, when you sync this side of the wallet, you're going to get these messages in the debug log that say hot node waiting for remote activation. It's because, hey, I'm up and ready to work and provide services to the network, but I just haven't been activated. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So once that conf file is set up and the wallet's restarted, it is effectively ready for a registration. So when you run that fundamental node start alias and that alias name, or in DigiWage coin, you would run the start, Masternode, right? Command with the alias. You are effectively sending a registration message to this machine or into the network, really, right? And when that machine picks that up as a registration, you'll see a message that says enabled cold wallet you can shut down the cold daemon effectively, is what is the message will show you. Now I'll actually show clearly what that message looks like when we actually do the Masternode setup in our next video. So this is the architecture. You have a cold PC wallet that has the collateral and sends a registration. Now if there's something wrong after you register, it's going to look like everything looks good. Your Masternode is up and shows enabled, and after an hour it falls off the network or says, you know, remove or expired or missing. If this wallet here is not communicating with the network, either there's a firewall blocking it or AV is not letting this wallet function the way it expects to, right? Because remember, it's a dummy wallet. There's no real funds or anything. It's just providing services. Being available as a peer is a service to the network. And if that network requests those wallets, those masternodes, to do certain services like transactions or even special services like instant send, then you're going to get rewarded if the masternode is doing its job. But if after an hour if this VPS wallet is not functioning for some reason, that registration will work initially, because all you're doing is registering. It's not truly activated until it actually communicates with the network and is working as expected. And so that's why if you see those masternodes that come off after an hour, is because there's a 60 to 65 minute timer in a lot of this masternode code that says, you know, if this wallet is not functioning, or the port's blocked, or it's not providing the service I expect, or it's not synced, or so many different reasons it can do that, it will fall off the network and you have to re-register it. So when you first run that start masternode or fundamental node, whatever the commands are for your particular coin, you're effectively just registering it. You're not really starting your masternode. You're registering it and hoping that the blockchain magic does its job and your VPS and your wallet is working as expected, or if it's configured the way that the devs or somebody has documented it has stated, then it should just work. You register, it says enabled, and after an hour it should stay enabled. So then your VPS wallet continues to function and provide services to the network, and your cold wallet can be shut down because remember, it holds the collateral with the transaction and the index, which you've basically registered through the start command because you've registered in the masternode.com, and now your cold wallet can be shut down. Now if you stake in that wallet, you can lock your collateral and stake your other coins, right? You don't want to stake your Masternode coins because if they ever stake, they split, and you basically destroyed your collateral, and now you have to rebuild it by sending it to a new address or a new output to the same address as 12,000 coins, for example, and redo a lot of this because you're going to have a new transaction hash, a new index, and a few other things. So you typically, wallets will let you lock or hide the collateral so that it can't be split or staked, and ideally it's better to just lock it so you don't stake it at all. And so your cold wallet doesn't necessarily have to be off. Most cases people have other coins in there, right? And if I have a main address with 100,000 coins and I only want to have one masternode for DigiWage, I send 12,000 to here, register it on one VPS, keep my other 88,000 coins, and I can stake them. So I hope this video was useful from an architecture perspective, and we're going to come out with a few more videos that actually show the mechanics, right? So this was more the theory of how it works. In my next video, I'm going to show how to set up a DigiWage masternode, and then we'll follow that up with part 2, which is how to set up a DigiWage masternode, a second one, controlling it through the same wallet and registering it, but having it activated on another instance of a VPS. We're actually going to run it. We're going to run both masternodes on one VPS and show you how to do that, and the configuration changes that need to happen at the masternode conf level, and so on and so forth. So look forward to those. I hope this was helpful. Leave some comments below.